think we have a choice right now to choose a future where we, so to speak, have humans at the helm of that transformation.
We're not training everyone to be AI engineers, but there's so much about this technology that is accessible. Things are being designed by humans. They are things that humans are making choices about. So be part of that. Get both the benefits, but also inform those guardrails. Hello, and welcome to AI with GennAI. I'm your host, Jen Gennai, and today I'm honored to welcome Paula Goldman. Paula Goldman is Salesforce's first ever Chief Ethical and Humane Use Officer and an Executive VP of Product, leading their efforts in building and deploying trustworthy technology. Prior to Salesforce, Paula was VP and head of the Tech and Society Solutions Lab, as well as VP of Impact Investing at Omidyar Network, an investment firm founded by eBay founder Pierre Omidyar. Paula was a member of the US National AI Advisory Committee, established by Congress to advise the president, where she chaired the Generative AI Working Group. She was also a fellow at UC Berkeley's Haas School of Business and earned her PhD at Harvard. As an entrepreneur and investor, she's lived and worked across multiple countries, including India, Sri Lanka, Bosnia, and the UK. So I'm delighted we've been able to pin her down and welcome here today. Paula, delighted to have you.
Hi, thanks for having me.
So Paula, we just heard your amazing biography there of all the work that you've done, all the impact investing, how you've advised startups, where you've lived across your life. But tell us a little bit more about what's behind the bio. What really led to you focusing on essentially a human-centered and ethical approach to technology development?
Yeah, if I had to simplify the story, I would say two things. One, growing up, my mom was really involved in technology, and I grew up in a family deeply influenced by histories of immigration. And my mom always said to me, technology can be a great equalizer. It can really extend opportunity. And I took that very seriously. So early in my career, I worked on impact investing, technology investing in companies that were meant to extend opportunity. So things like microcredit and alternative forms of access to finance, alternative forms of access to educational materials, and so on. At the end of that journey, and I was working with Pierre Omidyar, an eBay founder at Omidyar Network, we sort of looked up and we said to ourselves, AI and technology are extremely powerful. And not only can they open up opportunity, but they also need guardrails to make sure that we have them in service of people. So it's really kind of two sides of the same coin. It's like if you design products intentionally, not only can you avoid harm, but you can open up incredible opportunity. And that's really the motivation, the through line of my career.
Paula, thanks for sharing about the personal drive as well as that early career drive with the Omidyar Network, about understanding how AI has an impact on humans and society more broadly, and taking that pause to really understand the implications and recognizing that these massive technologies or massive opportunities of AI can have also an equally massive impact on people's lives. So that leads us then to considering our standard T3 trio of questions, which really try and tackle and learn from experts like you about AI's impact on society. So for our first question, how do you see AI shaping either the industries around you, obviously with the viewpoint that you would have at Salesforce, or economy at large? How do you see AI shaping that right now, the biggest areas that you're excited about?
Yeah, well, obviously, I think the impact of AI is already immense and it's growing. At Salesforce, we're very deep, as you know, into the world of agentic AI, or sort of agent force suite of products. And a recent survey, we saw 90% of enterprise IT leaders are planning to deploy AI agents in the next 2 years. So let's pause and think about that. Think about that sort of economic transformation, the transformation of the way we do business. AI agents, as you know, are able to take action, often autonomously, within guardrails, right? Suite of different actions. It could be helping with customer service. It could be personalizing and extending marketing campaigns, helping employees with self-service. And that kind of suite of activities is tremendous. I often go back to thinking about where we were in the early days of the internet. I'm gonna date myself, but like I do remember these early websites that were super clunky. And it might have been hard at the time to imagine what was going to happen to the economy and how the internet would open up not only new forms of commerce, but new forms of communication, new forms of us connecting with each other as humans, and so on. And I think we're on the brink of an even bigger transformation as we think about the agent to agent economy, right? Of agents transacting with other agents on our behalf or agents executing things on our behalf. And that can do incredible things for businesses and for people. But obviously, as we're here to talk about, it also requires guardrails and trust at the center of that and really putting people at the center of that transformation, which is what I spend a lot of time thinking about and acting on.
Yeah, this agentic AI, both present and increasing vision for the future. I get so many questions about it that people are very excited, but also a little bit scared about it as well. The excitement is from the mundane tasks that people already feel like, oh yeah, if something was able to handle that for me, and then that would tie together with this other thing. And they definitely see the vision of it's not just single agents, it's about this ecosystem of agents. And so there is
Yeah,
excitement there. But then the concern about we already don't fully have a great understanding of preventing like bias in existing AI and generative AI models. And now we're going to pile them on top of each other, essentially, that there's questions around that. So leads to the next question then.
yeah.
Is it specific to agentic AI that there might be existing ethical or regulatory challenges we need to be tackling now? Or do you feel a lot of the existing ethical and regulatory questions that we're already asking now will be similarly applied to agentic AI? Tell us a little bit
I
about your.
do. Yeah, I do. I think, and this kind of gives me a lot of hope to think about it this way, which is we're not starting from scratch, and there have been literally decades of work on questions of topics like bias or privacy, and even thinking about, for example, one strong regulatory imperative is these sort of higher risk use cases. So AI that is being used to determine people's life outcomes for jobs or for credit decisions or so on. Those require higher levels of investment and higher levels of guardrails around that. And I think continuing to have clarity on that, even with agentic AI, is really, really important. It's also very important as we have different countries passing regulation, different states, and so on, that there is an interoperable layer. That is to say, that there's a consistent way to understand what good means at the business level, at the consumer level, at the societal level. So all of that, I think, remains true. And I would have given you that same answer 5 years ago. I think what's different though, is actually what you started off with, right? There's a lot of hope and there's a little bit of fear. This is the time that it's really important for people to really take control of that AI journey and to understand what these guardrails look like. So, for example, in our agent suite of products, we have a whole series of guardrails that allow you to constrain the topics that an agent will answer, or to test to make sure you're getting the right results, to think about how you might vary a series of tests for different outcomes to make sure you're not getting toxic results, like in things that might offend people, all of that. Um, and I think those sorts of tests, that type of understanding is going to become easier and easier and more commonplace. Maybe in the past, we were used to thinking about AI as something very technical, and it's becoming something very accessible in our day to day lives. And it's so important that people feel not that it's something happening to them, but it's something that they're controlling, that they have agency over. And that's really critical as we get into the world of agents, because we're essentially delegating. We're delegating tasks to agents, right? So we need to know how to manage them. And that kind of literacy, I think, is going to become very, very critical to trustworthy outcomes.
Well, I think our listeners and viewers will be very happy to hear that reusing, building on existing expertise, knowledge, research, and frameworks is possible in this agentic AI future. I know many people worry that, oh no, I have to figure out a whole new thing, which sounds costly, labor intensive, and new. It raises new questions. And so being able to say, no, we're building on top of this expertise. We're augmenting these frameworks, I think, is massively important. But I really like that you're pointing out about human agency and control. I would argue that, yes, as we delegate more, the importance of human oversight, that human in the loop, however we're defining it, because I know it's not humans in the loop for every single decision, but that who is
Yeah,
accountable for designing these technologies, where they'll be used. How do we test them? Like you said, we have to test that they're working as intended,
100%.
test that they're not causing harm or reinforcing negative stereotypes or things like this. So all those things, like humans, we still have a role, but we need to make sure that we're building on top of that expertise instead of reinventing the wheel on top of things that, no, there's already a lot of great learnings there. So yeah, I think people will be very happy to hear you as an expert seeing this across so many different companies say that it's okay. And it's okay to use technologies like yours, Agent Force, that already come with guardrails and people understanding that they're not alone. There's frameworks, there's tools out there to help them.
1,000%.
So what does this agentic AI then future look like? So you're saying that this is the exciting technology we're working on. What will that allow us to do differently? In 2050, how do you see businesses changing, our lives changing? Do we now all just have leisure time at all time and we're not doing anything? What world then are we creating for 2050?
This is such a great question, Jen. And I've been around technology long enough to know that any attempt to like define 25 years from now, I'm going to fall flat on my face. But here's what I'll say. I'll say two things in response to the question. One is I was talking with a colleague, Silvio Savarese, who's our head of AI research, and he was showing me these incredible slides of images of what our streets looked like in the United States before commercial automobiles were introduced. And then images of how they changed once we had a system to manage commercial automobiles with like streetlights and stop signs and easement and so on, what lane, everything like that, right? And then he sort of fast forwarded to what would our streets look like with just autonomous cars,
Mhm.
right? And it's a different set of controls and guardrails and systems, right? So I don't know exactly what that system of sets and controls look like when we have agents interacting with other agents at scale, and even think about other advances in AI like robotics and so on. I think it's a fair bet to say that these things will become more and more pervasive in our lives. They will become cheaper. They will become more and more powerful. Um, but I do think we have a choice in that future, right? That is not preordained. And that's my second point, right? I think we have a choice right now to choose a future where we, so to speak, have humans at the helm of that transformation, where we center it on people and human potential, where we actively prepare people and their literacy around AI, around how they can leverage AI to get better outcomes for their businesses, their organizations, their governments, and so on. Or we can choose to sort of sit back and let this future happen to us, which I do not. I don't want that future, right? I want a world in which we are all active stakeholders to the point about agency, that we're designing those incentives and that we're using technology to unleash human potential.
And I think that's massively important that it's not just control, because people might consider, oh, control is something I only have like in my workplace when I'm using AI, but it's choice of how we use this technology. It's in our personal lives, in our professional lives. But that choice also involves what you've mentioned now a couple of times, literacy, helping people
Mhm.
understand both their roles, the technology. We're not training everyone to be AI engineers, but there's so much about this technology that is accessible that allows us to make choices, have control over, decide how, where, and whether to use it in particular use cases. And so seeing those tie together, literacy allows for choice, which allows then for control, and allowing
Mhm.
people and encouraging them to acknowledge that. Because I do have to say, some media attention or hype implies that these things are going to happen to us. But all of
Right.
these things are being designed by humans. They are things that humans are making choices about. So be part of that to get both the
Yeah.
benefits, but also inform those guardrails. I want to cut through some of that kind of implications that we don't have control, we don't have choices, because we do. And it's about using it every day in an informed way.
Use the word literacy, but I also think another important word is confidence,
Hmm.
right? So you play around with AI tools, kind of get a good sense of where they're giving you answers that are fit and where you might want to like tweak and retweak the prompt and get a better answer, right? And that type of fluency, understanding how AI is used and leveraged to turbocharge your work, whether you're inside a company or you're in a nonprofit or whatever it is you're doing, that type of confidence, that's, I think, what we need, right? And that's, I think, how businesses get the best outcomes because they're sort of setting priorities for how to use AI, and they're also letting innovation flourish amongst their employees. And that sort of marriage of that type of bottom up, top down innovation is where we, I think, see the best outcomes and where we get redesigned workflows that really drive the best results.
Yeah, no, that's exactly true. And I can't help using this as the stepping stone to the next part then, that as we talk about making people confident in using technology, it's a phased approach to building that confidence. It's playing with it first, finding a few use cases, maybe getting used to it in your personal life, and then finding those use cases in professional lives. And when I talk to people, especially more senior people who expect their technical teams to know all about this and help drive part of that AI strategy, and I'm saying, no, like as leaders, as C-suite members, you need to have some of that confidence, comfort with this technology to build the ideas, think about where your strategy is going. And one of the ways we do it and making it accessible is playing games with these generative AI and trying to make it confident. So that's my intro to how I use generative AI for this Gen AI lens section. I've used generative AI to generate a couple of questions for our next two questions. So the first
Okay.
question has three options around a tech and society topic. And then the next three generated have been more related to what drives people kind of human values. So for the first three generated questions on tech and society, what number are you feeling today? 1, 2, or 3 for the question?
Uh, oh no, I'm super nervous. Let's see. I'll go for door number 3, Jen.
Door number 3, technological unemployment. If AI eventually displaces 50% of current jobs, but creates unprecedented prosperity through increased productivity, should people still need to work? What's your vision for a fair economic model?
This is a hard one. And I will say, I don't think anyone has a crystal ball about how AI is going to transform economy and work. But it is very, very important that we take this seriously, and that we think about how we empower people to blaze their own trails and take control of their own transformation as we think about how it enhances productivity and work. So I'll say two things. One is I think there's a very clear and important conversation about the role that work plays, not only in sustaining us, which is, a very, very important point, and that is very important to keep paying attention to, but in providing a sense of purpose and providing a sense of meaning. And I think there's room to play, right? As we think about how would we all redesign our jobs if we could? What would they look like? What would that sense of purpose look like if we were starting from scratch? But I also think your question also underlines the point about this moment that we're in, where we get a chance to define, is AI augmenting us or, replacing us? And I think it's really, really important that as we think about redesigning workflows with AI, that we're thinking about human judgment, human oversight, human relationships, and how that actually greases the skids for businesses and makes things even better and more productive. I don't think that's going away anytime soon.
Mm-hmm. No, I think that's excellent points. And I love the idea. And I think it is what people want to hear, but sometimes maybe can't believe that it's what we will choose in terms of what to focus on, that there will be flexibility to allow for choice that wasn't available before. Maybe harmful, unsafe, or otherwise tasks had to be done. And so people had to do that. And I think allowing for whether it's going to be AI integrated into systems, robotics, or otherwise, there's going to be ways to allow for deeper work in some areas, removal of unsafe work in other areas. Recently, I was reading some research on how a lot of C-suite, a lot of CEOs do believe that there's going to be disruption in their workforce, but they also say we're already seeing how we're hiring for new roles that didn't exist before because of the opportunities that we're seeing, because AI can also help us create whole new lines of business. So there's new roles for lines of business, not just within existing business, how roles change. So definitely acknowledge a certain disruption, but how I speak about it is like the destruction versus disruption approach, and that there's been so many changes in the workforce labor market over time. We also know we don't have enough employees for so many areas right now. So how can this technology help us
Mhm.
address some of those immense needs in some areas while allowing us to create new jobs in areas we don't even know yet? So I definitely
That's
see
right.
the way to not be naive about it, but also think
Yeah.
that, yes, there's disruption. Disruption can certainly by itself be uncomfortable, but it is very different than feeling there won't be anything left essentially for humans. There's going to be a lot, and some of it we don't even know what we'll be doing yet.
That's right. And then how do we give people a bridge to that future? One of the most interesting things is, I was thinking about that, like how even AI is a tool for that, right? So thinking about AI skills taxonomies that are used in HR functions that help people. We have something like that internally where people can go in onto a tool called Career Mosaic, and then they can put in what their current job and skills are, and then map to other jobs that may be available that are new, like on a whole bunch of net new roles, as you were just talking about. And then there's a roadmap for here's where your skills match exactly. And then here are some skills that you might want to pick up. And here are exactly some experience based ways that you can pick up those skills, those types of experiences that are actually enabled by AI. In some sense, AI can be a tool to help people bridge to that AI future.
Mhm. Yeah, no, excellent point. Okay, our second question is the more personal kind of values alignment one. So here, what number are you feeling? One, two, or three? Personal.
I'm feeling number one.
Number one, future regrets. What aspect
Oh,
of our current work or societal issue is given insufficient attention to resolve that as a society we will regret in future years that we didn't do more now to address it? So a future regret. What are we not doing right now we should be doing? I think the question is asking.
that is a great question. And I'm going to continue with our current sort of line of conversation and say, um, I think that there's a whole bunch of research emerging that talks about how AI tutors and AI coaches can help us learn skills when they're sort of deployed in a way that help us gain these skills, right? And also, we want to make sure that we retain judgment, that we retain the sort of wisdom that's born of experience, that we retain these sort of interpersonal skills that help us be effective in our roles. I think it's deeply, deeply important that we are expanding things like apprenticeships, that we are thinking about this workforce of the future, and that we don't see that as a separate issue from some of the things that we talked about before, like how to use guardrails to get the right outcomes from AI agents, how to ensure that we are in control of our AI footprint individually and as organizations. Those two things actually go together, right? Preparing people for an AI future, helping them understand what skills are needed, and helping them learn how to manage AI in their work. I think all three of those things are super important. I think we need to invest way more. If all the things that we've said are even 10% true, if this is a transformative force in the way that we think it is, people need to be paying attention right now, and we need to be helping people feel in control of that future.
Mhm. No, I love that. And it reminds me when I was growing up school in Ireland, we had a class called Civics where you learned essentially about how to be a good citizen in the world around you. And it was like both like how to vote, where your taxes go and making sure that they're valuable, how to donate to charity and feel like you're contributing things larger than yourselves. And it was a way essentially of teaching us as younger kids, like how to be a responsible person in the world,
Yeah.
not trying to teach us values or things obviously that are either inherent or built through our families of origin and culture. But I thought it was a massively important lesson. And when I think about AI technologies, and back to a previous point you had, right, AI isn't just about technology. It's obviously about context and society and how we integrate it. But it brought to mind this class I used to have, that how we might need this for AI, that AI is not just a technology, it's how we use it, how we make decisions around it, how we still remain connected as humans as we use it, how we're always
Yeah.
thinking about guardrails and making sure that responsible AI, risk management don't all appear as like costs. They're just things that we're now all inherently thinking of because that's the way that we've been taught and developed. So yeah, it just raised that mind to me that as we're learning about these technologies, and kids these days are gonna know way more about it leaving school than even me after working on it for years. But it keeps in mind that it's not just the technology they need to be learning; it's about how that technology will affect them, people around
Yeah.
them, what are the second order
100%.
effects, the unintended consequences, and all of that comes together to be good online AI citizens and owners.
And can I offer one more actually that came to mind as
Okay.
you were talking? Um, I think we need to pay more attention to energy efficiency in AI.
Mhm.
We've done a lot of really interesting work on that at Salesforce, where we have a model that estimates energy efficiency for different AI models. We've done a whole bunch of work about thinking about energy and AI across our enterprise. And obviously, that's going to grow as that question is going to grow as AI becomes more and more powerful, more and more pervasive. And that will become, not only important for individual companies, but important for our economy, important for countries. If you think about that question of what will you look back at 20 years from now, that is an investment that will yield a lot of dividends, both for individuals and for society at large.
No, you're exactly right. Thanks for highlighting that the importance of understanding that energy footprint and energy and water footprint. I was just talking the other
Yeah,
day about the
yeah,
amount of water that's been used in an increasingly dry and hot world. Water becomes increasingly important as well. So really good to hear how Salesforce is tackling that, but also making tools available for other people to understand
yeah,
that footprint as well. Talking about tools already available, would love to end then on our essentially making it real section for our listeners and viewers that you've worked in this area now for a long time. Before that, in a very related area in this type of impact investing, recognizing how technology has an impact on the world. Any example you're able to share about a particular problem or that you tackled that brought together some of the things we've talked about today, the immense opportunity of this
yeah.
technology, but recognizing guardrails and what you did around that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think one additional extremely important angle around how we develop this technology is not just about human empowerment generically, but about inclusion specifically, right? And making sure that as we're creating these technologies, that we're doing it with stakeholders that we are designing with. And I think about that a lot. One of my remits at Salesforce is that my org includes product accessibility. And we've thought a lot about not just how we design and ship accessible software, but how we do so with the deepest insights from our partners in the accessibility community. One example that was very inspiring to me is we have a whole neurodivergent steer co. And these are employees who identify as neurodivergent. We have been doing a whole bunch of hackathons and innovation to think about not only how do we make our products more accessible, but how is accessibility a source of innovation in our products? So, one of the projects that we worked on was looking at some of our work at Slack. And so we did this steer co looking at some of our Slack product development suite. And I think we've known for a long time that we want to keep enhancing features for Slack that make it easier to focus, right? So who better to ask about questions of focus than our neurodivergent community? Through that, as we did this hackathon and we looked at different features, we came up with a whole bunch of prototypes that when our product team looked at those prototypes, we figured out not only would this, benefit the people that came up with these prototypes, but benefit everyone, which is frequently the case when you design for accessible experiences. And I love that story because I think there's like wisdom in there that it has been true for decades and that will remain true as we look towards this agent enabled future, which it is still all about people. It's still all about human experiences. And that when we bring people in and we ask for their wisdom and we ask them to sort of steer the experience and steer the transformation, we get better results both for people and for businesses. And that's, I think, what drives me.
Oh, that's massively important and such a great example of the importance of involving many different types of people in the product design and development process. Our users, our customers, our stakeholders are also diverse as well. How do we get as close to building for everyone. And like you said, many of these use cases that have been built for accessibility or inclusion end up benefiting everyone. And I think that's really great and another strong point for that. But speaking of wisdom and all the wisdom you've already shared today, would like to end on the wisdom for our listeners and watchers of what can they do tomorrow to either be more responsible in their day-to-day work or to inform responsibilities and this human role of choice and control that we've been speaking about. What should people already be thinking about? Practical advice for them tomorrow.
I would say if you're within an organization and you don't yet have a set of principles, develop them now. Develop a set of principles for how you want AI to evolve. And I will say, having lived this experience with Salesforce's responsible AI principles for many years now and seeing them evolve, they're real. They're anchors for how we do our work. So that's what I would say. Second, I would say compliance and responsible AI is not just a checkbook exercise. It is very important that we track and we watch it, but also just think about that responsible AI isn't the most responsible AI is the one that genuinely solves human problems, right? So it's about solving business problems for people, solving societal problems for people. Um, and then finally, I would encourage people to have confidence as they think about their own AI journeys and think about keeping people at the helm of those journeys. We get a felt sense of how AI works by working with it, right? So the more we jump in, the more we experiment, the more that we tweak those prompts or think about different workflows, the better results we're going to get. And that level of involvement, that level of confidence and control is both how we get innovation and also how we get responsible guardrails. So I would encourage people to jump in and have that confidence as they lead their organizations through this transformation.
Oh, brilliant. Love that. So practical. So principles, anchoring, make them real. And responsible AI, it solves problem. It's not just for checkboxes and building our confidence. Confidence leads to control and that choice. What a great way to end. Thank you so much, Paula, for joining us today. And for everyone listening, you'll find Paula's information in the show notes. And thank you for joining. And we'll see you next time. And remember, when we're building technology today, it is informing what we're building tomorrow. So let's build wisely. Thank you.